In order to engage in the work of visual thinking, of making marks in order to make meaning, all you really need are two things: something to write and draw with and something to write and draw on. So you can use literally whatever you have on hand, but I have found that certain tool combinations have different benefits. And that's what I'd like to share in this video by identifying some visual thinking materials that you might use that run across this spectrum from small scale to large scale, some of which are analog tools, others digital. And I have 5 specific tool combos that I'm going to share that I'm calling the 5 kits. Let's start with some analog tools. On the small scale, 2 resources that you'll benefit from having on hand are sticky notes and index cards. In both of these cases, you have these small pieces of paper that have the helpful constraint of being able to contain just one or a couple ideas, maybe a small sketch or two. So there's the constraint of the size of the piece of paper that you're working with, but then there's the flexibility of these being modular. You can move them around up on the wall, on the desk, as you're trying to figure out how all of these individual ideas work together. Stage 3 of the Sketch It Out framework when you're trying to solve the puzzle. As we bump up in scale slightly for the second kit, we come to the simple notebook or sketchbook. For me, the key characteristic of a notebook is that it can fit in your backpack. It's large enough for you to kind of brainstorm a whole set of ideas, maybe what would take half a dozen index cards or sticky notes. You can lay it out on one page and flip to the next when you need to. Since a notebook is bound, it's easier to kind of keep a collection of ideas together, whereas with index cards or sticky notes, as the number of these individual pieces grows, it gets a little bit harder to manage. The notebook is a nice kind of middle ground where you have a decent amount of page space to work with a tool that can fit in your backpack, and that can contain perhaps a collection of related ideas. You could have one notebook for all that you do, or you could have a few different notebooks, each dedicated to a specific project. In a moment here, I will share 2 of my most used notebooks, but first let's round out the analog side of these kits you might work with. As we look large scale, 2 resources in particular have been really useful for me. One being large poster paper that actually just take the form of really large sticky notes that you can tear off one at a time, put on a section of your wall so that you can be standing up and moving around using the physical space of a room so that you can walk around your ideas and see them from different perspectives. Similar to what you can do with sticky notes and index cards, but getting a little bit more of your whole body involved since you've got a much larger space to work with. I also put whiteboards in this category as well. If you find that you kind of have trouble making clear marks, whether you're writing or drawing at these 2 scales, if it feels uncomfortable working in this mode, try going big where you can get kind of more large scale movement. You might find that it's easier to write and draw when you've got a large space to work with as opposed to a tiny one. So these are the 3 analog kits that I encourage you to consider. And the idea here is not that you have to get all 5 of these kits before you can start doing visual thinking work. Instead, I actually encourage you to just pick one to get comfortable with at first, and then explore the others either when your work starts to feel stagnant, if you just get bored with one particular tool set, or if the current creative project isn't fitting well in your go-to kit. If there's something about it that would benefit from changing in scale or perhaps changing from analog to digital. So let's round out this diagram here with 2 more kits. Now, as we think about scale in the digital realm, I'm not referring to the size of your tablet, but instead the dynamics of the particular app that you're using. I consider a small scale app to be those that have kind of a page by page approach to their design. So you have kind of maybe one canvas that you're working with that has some finite dimensions to it, and often some sort of a toolbar up top where you can change color, change pen or brush, get quick access to an eraser or a highlighter, and then whenever you fill this one page, you swipe over or perhaps scroll down to get to another page. So these are apps like Notability and GoodNotes that most mimic the experience of working with a notebook, where you have the constraint of a particular page size and a few different mark-making tools, but not a ton of other fancy features to distract you from your core task of getting ideas down. So this one's about keeping it simple. If instead you would like to lean into the complexity of the topics that you're working with, then you might consider infinite canvas apps. That's what I consider to be the large-scale version of digital tools. Here, you never run out of room because your canvas can expand to be as large as you need it to be. For example, I use the tool Concepts when I know I want a very large space to brainstorm for a project or take notes on maybe a long podcast interview or even a podcast series that I'm listening to. So this could be an ever-growing mind map, maybe, that can expand to be as large as you need it to be. And what's nice about Concepts, and I think many of the apps that fit in this category, is that they're vector-based. So you can also do certain types of editing to these marks, scaling up and down, moving around, exporting, without losing quality. Another branch of infinite canvas apps that I kind of associate with these other two kits as well. I think that sticky note / index cards, poster paper / whiteboard, and certain of these infinite canvas apps have the most collaborative potential, which is another thing to consider as you're picking your tools for a particular project. Do you need to be able to collaborate with others? How easy is it for a group of people to reference and add to the board that you're working on? That's relatively easy with these three kits, not so much with these two. And as I mentioned, Concepts is an app that I like that fits in this category. Notability is my favorite here. With index cards and sticky notes, get whatever you can find. In the realm of notebooks, I mentioned a while back how much I enjoy the composition notebook for really rough writing and brainstorming. It's great because it's cheap and you won't worry about using up lots of pages. I've also recently been making use of a large sketchbook specifically to draft the videos that I make for this channel. So what I like about this one is that the pages are blank, there's lots of space, and typically I find that about 1 page of brainstorming here with this tool combo is all I need as a reference for then recording a video. That's my goal at least. And it's great to throw this in my backpack, to head to a coffee shop, do some brainstorming outside of this one physical space where I actually record the videos. So that's an example of a notebook dedicated to a specific project. If I can find it, I will link to that specific notebook down below this video, as well as any other specific tools that I think might be helpful. But I want to reiterate that you don't need special tools to do this work. Cheap copy paper and whatever pen you have on hand will serve you just fine. But do pay attention to getting bored or to when a specific project lends itself to a specific type of tool. Those are 2 good reasons to branch out. And these are the 5 different categories that I encourage you to branch out into. The 5 kits to consider. For more on how to make use of any particular tool combination, to learn how to sketch out simple drawings and diagrams as a learning, problem-solving, or communication tool, I encourage you to check out our Sketch Instinct program, which includes a library of complete-at-your-own-pace online courses and regular live events with me that will teach you how to do this type of work for yourself and for others. You can find more about that program and other resources at verbaltovisual.com. I wish you luck in finding a kit that works well for you, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Till then.